I'm Ronnie. All the good names are taken. Podcast 31 days, day 21. Tim, today we're talking Phantasm from 1979.
Best movie so far.
Tim, have you seen Phantasm before you watched it?
Absolutely not.
Dumbass question.
No. I know
Merely-
what you mean. Have I seen Phantasm before? It's a horror movie, which means no, never seen it.
What'd you think of it?
Dude, I've discovered this, Ronnie. If it's a new horror movie, I absolutely hate it unless it's ravenous. And that wasn't
It was
legit.
99.
Right. If it's old school and it's stylish, I love it. And you want to talk about style? This movie throws style at you while you're watching this horror movie. It is fantastic.
Yeah, this is usually not my cup of tea, Tim. Movies like this. The first time I watched it was during the last drive-in with Joe Bob Briggs, and then I watched it by myself. I always saw it at the video store. I always saw The Tall Man, Phantasm.
Yeah.
I never rented it. I remember seeing previews where you just see the balls flying around. I was like, well, that's really not that interesting to me. I really wish I'd have rented it back then because I would have totally been into Phantasm 1, 2, 3, and 4. I mean, this is right up your alley because this is like the Puppet Master and all that other stuff. It's so quirky and at the same time so freaking smart that it leaves you confused at what the movie really is.
Oh, and it's great because you get to fill in those blanks by yourself, and it does just enough legwork to where you can do that and it makes sense, right? Like it's not nonsensical to where there's just things unexplained. It just doesn't tell you things and you have to fill in the blanks.
Yeah, the movie's centered around two brothers, Jody and his little brother Mike, and their buddy Reggie, who's an ice cream man. We'll talk about Reggie in a second. Mike and Jody's parents had died. I believe, was it a car wreck, Tim? Or do they say how the parents died?
I don't think they say.
Okay, well, the parents are dead, and Jody's taking care of Mike. They get involved in all this stuff that happens at the funeral home. The movie starts off with a dirty biker having sex with a woman in the graveyard, and like every man's worst nightmare, halfway through it, the woman turns into a bald-headed man.
No, he's dumb. As evil as the Phantasm is, he's not a monster.
My first note, the first thing I wanted to talk about is the tall man, Angus Scrum, whatever his name is. So his deal is he just likes to have sex with dudes. He likes to go to bars.
Is that
He likes to go to a bar, pretend to be a woman, have sex with a dude, immediately kill that dude, turn him into a dwarf slave that he can send back to his planet to be a worker.
I thought that was hell. He sent it into hell, right?
No, this is a space movie, Tim. That's what's crazy about this. Look, at a point in time when they're in that funeral home, I'm thinking this is like the nexus of the universe. It's multi-dimensional. Let's get straight to the ending. Can we get straight to the ending for a second? Because you've
always told me we don't have to do this in any order.
Yeah, so you're paying attention, you're learning. At the end of the movie, you find out that Jody died in a car wreck and Mike is just having a bad nightmare. Reggie, oh yeah, or is he? So that brings up the element, are they in hell? I mean, that's a great point. But I mean, the later movies let us know that Angus, the tall man, is bringing interdimensional slaves that he kills and turns into dwarves back to their planet so they can work. So this is evil space movie, and that's the reason it disappears there at the end. If you go into it like you did, Tim, not knowing the other movies, it is easy to imagine that they're in hell. That's hell. I mean, and that's probably a better movie if it's hell. Okay.
Well, you know for a fact that they're going into somewhere in space.
How do I know?
Yeah.
Because in the other movies, they go to the planet.
Oh, my God. And you sure it's a planet and not like hell?
Well, I mean, I'm not 100% sure, but I mean, I'm pretty positive.
When we first go into this, what do you call that place in the cemetery?
It's a mausoleum.
The mausoleum. Okay. So we're in a mausoleum. When Jody is standing in the doorway and the light's coming from behind him, I mean, it's almost like something like in a Stanley I sound like
Kubrick.
such a dumbass.
Kubrick.
It almost sounds like something in a Stanley Kubrick. Kubrick. Shit. Okay, get
Kubrick.
it? Here we go. When when Jody is standing in the doorway and the light's coming from behind him, and it's like a movie, like, I don't know, Eyes Wide Shut by that Stanley dude. I don't know. And the light, and it's got like the shadows, and you've got him in the doorway with the light coming behind him, and it's making the shapes. And I'm like, dude, they're using light and shadow and all of these like stark contrasting colors really well. I'm not a
Yes.
cinephile. Like, I'm not going to notice that unless you shove it in my face. And they do shove it in your face, but it's super effective at creating the atmosphere that you need to get into this horror movie.
Yeah, Don Coscarelli does a great job in this movie of not only what you just talked about, but a great score.
Dude, the
throughout it.
music, the way they use the score is amazing.
I mean, people talk about Halloween and how John Carpenter uses the Halloween theme throughout that movie. It's the same way here in Phantasm. That Phantasm theme is burned into my brain right now.
Sometimes it's like an acid trip type movie.
I knew you were going to bring this up, and I kind of figured that's why you would like this movie, because it feels like whoever made it was on drugs at the time, because the movie delves off into like 15,000 directions, especially with that ending we get. Like,
Yeah.
we don't know what the heck is going on throughout the movie. All we know is this tall guy goes from a woman to a man. Mike sees him walking all around town, and it's like, almost like you said, like artsy scenes, like the tall man, slow motion, walking down the road or the street of town, excuse me. And then he just stops, and right there is Reggie in his ice cream truck. He turns, smells,
And all you hear is his footsteps and the music is on point.
yes, it is.
The dude who did this movie was a music guy, because when Jody and the ice cream man, their friends, sit down to do that little guitar thing,
That's
a pretty killer riff. And I'm like, man,
Yes.
they know the music. They're getting this.
I love the scene of them playing. I love the idea that Jody is just staying in town to take care of Mike, and Mike knows that. Just think about this. Mike is under the car working on Jody's awesome Barracuda that he's got.
And he's a kid, by the way. Like, Mike is the kid guy in the horror movie.
Yeah, he's like 13. I mean,
Yeah.
if he's that old, this guy comes up that's obviously Jody's classmate, and he's like, "Hey, man, sorry about your parents. What do you still do hanging around this town?" He's like, "Got to take care of the kid, man. But, I've had the conversation with him. I'm fixing to get out of here. I feel like he's following me around all the time."
And oh, he is. That kid's got some cardio.
In a way, though, Tim, it's really sad the way Mike follows Jody around.
Mhm.
It's not because he's obsessed with Jody. It's because he's scared to death that he's going to lose Jody and he's going to be by himself, which is like a different type of route. Once again, a different type of route that you don't normally see in a sci-fi / horror movie. Like, this movie's going to end, and these two guys are bonded even more, and there's no way Jody's going to leave him. He's going to take Mike with him wherever he goes. And you can tell it was the 70s because people were used to being left alone. And just the fact that Mike's like a little dog and he doesn't want his brother to leave him because he knows about, and I think that's the reason Mike is going to this weird psychic lady. At first I was like, okay, Mike's going to this psychic lady because he wants to
because that chick's there. But that's totally not it. They're both just like witches.
Yeah, and he's really going there to try to get a reading on whether or not he's going to leave him. And I love that the grandma, I don't know if she's playing a character or if she's really
Get your hand out of that box, kid.
because she starts laughing when Mike leaves. I mean, it's crazy. But yeah, this movie's nuts. And I can't sit here and say that I've seen part 2, 3, 4, and 5, but I have seen some of 5. So I know that it goes off into like just crazy ass territory.
See, by that point, they've probably lost all like direction, right?
Probably to an extent, but you got to figure the kind of fans that like the Phantasm movie are in for whatever ride that they're going to give them. They're there, I think.
So I'm a big fan of Lord of Illusions, right?
Scott Bakula.
And I'm a big fan of that because it goes straight into weird things are happening, and you just have to understand that it's a cult, right? It's a horror movie, and strange things are there's phenomenons that can't be explained, and you just got to roll with it. And it works in this movie. You know, he goes to see this witch oracle person with her blonde headed daughter, and they go straight into that. Like, there's no lead up into this. It's like, wow, like there's just this is happening in this town. When he goes into the mausoleum, all of a sudden there's these floating silver balls that act as weapons. Can I go ahead and talk about that dude's death?
Absolutely.
And not only are they weapons, like, they thought about this. It floats, it burrows into this dude's brain, blood is spurting out the other end. I'm like, man, like,
that drill was brutal. The drill into the head.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I'm like, man, this is the kind of stuff I want to see in your thriller flick. Like, I want, give me straight horror. Crazy things are happening. There's supernatural phenomenon, and that's what you're fighting against. It's not some super tough guy who's back from the dead or anything like that. It's just straight up demonic type power. And that's what I guess the caretaker, I guess he's the head honcho of this, the caretaker of this mausoleum is doing.
It's all shrouded in mystery at the very beginning. Like I said, the tall man, we don't really know what his deal is. We know that Mike snuck off to watch the funeral of the guy that gets killed at the very beginning that was friends with Jody and Reggie. I believe he was in their band. I may be wrong about that. Hit us in the comments on how wrong I am about that. But as he's watching, he sees the tall man like pick the guy's casket up.
Dude, one-hands it.
And throws it in the back of the car. And then he jumps on his bike to go away. And you know something's up with the tall man because he does like a little and knocks him off his bike. Like, he could have killed him at that point right there if he wanted to. So the rest of the movie is Mike sneaking into the mausoleum, trying to figure out what's going on in there. And immediately he gets himself trapped. And like Tim said, we see the little spheres that are killing people, and Mike locks himself into a room after the dude. I'm going to say this right now. Maybe the best scene in the movie is after the guy's brain just got drilled by the sphere, tall man rounds the corner and Mike's there. And he does like the thing from Airheads when Adam Sandler is on the roof and Adam Sandler takes a step and the cop takes a step. And then Adam Sandler takes a step and then the cop takes a step.
They're mirroring each other.
Yes. And then he bolts and runs. And this old man, you know, he can't run, but the way they shoot it, it makes it look so creepy. Like when the ball is coming down after Indiana Jones, you know, in real life, it's never going to hurt him, but it looks like it might. And it looks like the tall man may grab him. He locks himself into a room and then he looks up and the tall man's hand has been shut in the door. So he just takes his knife because it's the 70s. Everybody has a knife on them.
Mm-hmm.
Because you never know when somebody's going to grab you and try to rape them and you got to cut their off.
Got to have your Bowie knife.
He cuts like his fingers off and we get the yellow blood. And you know, when I saw yellow blood, I immediately thought of Alien, and this is some type of android that's doing, and it may be an android.
I was thinking formaldehyde.
Oh, that's even better. That's even better. You're right.
Because it's a cemetery.
Okay,
Dude, how cool was that giant poster in Mike's room of it's a shot from the moon to the earth, and it's a giant poster that takes the whole wall.
But now you know why it's there.
Because it's a space movie.
There you go. Here's a good question, and I'm gonna see if I can find the footage. The dude, when we first see the silver sphere and it burrows into the guy's head, and then the drill goes through in a great piece of effects, he hits the ground, and then there's like a yellow puddle. Is that piss? Okay, it was piss because I saw some fizz in there, so he probably had high sugar. So that's what's going on.
He needs to drink some water.
Dude was dehydrated before he died. He takes one of these fingers back home, and Jody's sort of like Putty from Seinfeld. He's just, whenever we cut back to Jody, he's just like staring at the wall. He takes that finger that's still moving, and then he shows it to Jody, and then it turns like into some kind of flying creature. And what do you think they want to do with it? They shove it into the garbage disposal and kill it.
If there's one bad thing about this movie, it's the whole telling your actors, hey, we need you to hold on to this thing and act like it's alive in your hands. That never, ever works. Never. It has yet to work in anything I've seen, and they try to do it in this movie with that thing. It's like they fold it in like a towel, and it's like, oh God, it's alive. But no, it's not. You're just jerking around.
Reggie always wanders up, the ice cream guy. Reggie always wanders up after something has happened or when you least expect it. He comes through the back door and he's like, hey guys, just come over to hang out before school gets out. Hey, Mike, you want to come hang out? It's a hot day. Ice cream's going to be flying fast and furious. And about that time, the flying creature comes back out of the sink and they wrestle it back down again. He's like, what the hell's going on?
I kept thinking the ice cream friend was going to end up being a bad guy.
When he
He's
shows back
not.
up,
He's one of the good guys, but I kept thinking he's going to turn on him at some point.
yeah, when he shows back up at the mausoleum, I was like,
Right.
this is not Reggie.
He's supposed to be dead.
Yeah, Mike finds Reggie's ice cream truck turned over and all kind of yellow blood and shit inside of it. And when he shows back up just out of the blue with no explanation, and like those guys are like, hey, yeah, come on. So
But they needed his knowledge of how to tune a guitar to close the dimension gate.
there you go, because they teased it earlier in the movie during the front porch song whenever he sticks it in there. You know all about instruments. I don't.
Tuning fork.
Yeah, the tuning fork. He does it on the front porch, so they were like showing you what was going to happen later on.
And you know what's crazy is I thought that sound was just background noise to create the atmosphere, but it's actually the noise that this gate is making that they find, right? And it's an invisible portal. Like you just put your hand through and it disappears. It's one of those sticks. Mike goes in and I thought it was hell because everything's red and it's dozens of these little tiny dwarf things. And they're just taking these barrels, which is, I understood the barrels as being, this is how he turns the recently deceased into his dwarven slaves, right? He sticks them in the barrels and they take him down to this place and then they come back and they're under his power.
What's really happening is these people are dying. He's turning them into his dwarf slaves and he's sending them to his planet, which is solid red, to be slaves there and do that work. That's the reason when the whole first chase scene with the hearse that you were talking about earlier with Jody and Mike, when the car finally crashes, they go over there and it's their friend that got killed at the beginning of the movie. They let us know that he's dead and they've turned him into a dwarf slave. I was trying to think, I started to text you and say, what are the names of those people from Star Wars, the sand people or whatever? They
look like Jawas.
They look like Jawas. They walk single file to hide their numbers.
Yeah.
I mean,
nice.
Star Wars is jumping through there. This movie takes a lot of twists and turns. And like you said, at the end of it, it's Reggie, it's Mike, and it's Jody, and there's an interdimensional portal. And the next thing you know, they've set a trap for the tall man, Tim. They can't kill him the regular way. So they're thinking they're going to do the whole, we'll bury him beneath the earth and keep him at bay. Then it actually works. So good guys win, right?
Or do they?
Mike wakes up, like we said 30 minutes ago. Mike wakes up and Reggie's there. Hey, Mike, you had a nightmare. And then, he's like, where's Jody? Jody died in a car wreck. So we're sitting here thinking, left as the audience going, did we really just watch a fever dream?
I was a little ticked off, right? Because you never want a movie to end where, it's a dream sequence. But it doesn't, because Mike goes up to his room and you see in the mirror, he goes to the mirror, and of course it's the thing where tall guy is behind him and they grab him and they take him and the bad guys win.
I really can't think if that's a cool shot there at the end or a corny shot. I'm leaning more towards a very cool shot of a giant menacing man right as he comes through the window to grab him. And that's Phantasm, guys, 1979. And don't worry, I know this review probably wasn't the best. You can unsubscribe. I've said that a lot here lately, but me and Tim plan to do the entire Phantasm franchise sometime after October. So Tim's on board. I'm on board. We're going to figure this whole franchise out. Tim, Phantasm 1979. What are you rating it?
9 out of 10.
9 out of 10.
The Phantasm grabs your attention from the very beginning and carries you all the way through. Like there's nothing there. At no point do you stop and say, well, wait a minute, this doesn't match up with this, I'm not buying this. It all works because they take that occultic, something demonic is happening angle. I want to say this before you give your rating. If you ever are at a dive bar and the hottest chick at the bar is ready to go in less than a minute and she wants to go to a cemetery, you deserve to die. Like, if you're that gullible, you deserve to be murdered for whatever those people that are about to jump you want, whether it's your kidney, your wallet, your soul, whatever. That's on you.
We didn't talk about it, but Jody goes to the bar. The bar looks like a fun place to go hang out and have a few drinks. But like you said, there's one woman in there. Jody goes and picks up the tall man who is in his woman outfit, and they go back to the cemetery, and Jody has hit in about the time Mike comes running through and scares them. Otherwise, Jody would have died earlier in this movie, and Jody would have been a dwarf slave. It's back to this. I'm giving this movie a 7.1. It's a really good movie that goes a lot of different places. Is it my favorite type of movie, Tim? No, but I can enjoy this movie and I can appreciate it for what it was, especially when it was made. I do think, am I one of those guys that think the tall man is one of the iconic horror people? No, I do not, but I do think he's very creepy in this movie. This is a really good movie, but when it boils down to it, the tall man's 6'8" and he's just trying to dudes. 7.1 edit 7.1, and that's it. No emails yet this month, Tim. Let's keep it going. ATGNT
Way to sell it, Ronnie. Way to sell it.
Seriously though, why would they email us? Why do I do the whole email gimmick?
To tell us what to watch.
They can
be like, hey, do this movie.
They could do that in the comments, or they could do that on X. Or
the only people that comment are your shithead podcast buddies.
That's not necessarily true, Tim. Come on. Come on. Tim going full heel. Margarita night. Day 21 in the books. 10 days left, Tim. We're going to make it. Before we started doing the reviews tonight, I convinced myself we weren't going to make it, but this Phantasm review has put me back on cloud nine. We'll be back tomorrow, guys. Tim, you're looking great, brother.